Hi, thanks for popping in. Just down here in the foyer of the X2 Vibe Dsum Hotel in Chiang Mai, Thailand. And as you can hear, the patting in the background, that's the rain hitting the roof. It's been raining solid all day, so I'm sort of stuck here because I don't really feel like going out in the rain. But I just wanted to come to you today to talk about tyres, bicycle tyres. And there's been a huge amount of talk about tyres and rolling resistance. You know, bigger tyres roll less. And I'd just like to kind of talk about that a little bit. Now, with tyres, back in the old days, the softer the sidewalls, the better the tyres. So, you know, if you got like a high wove thread, higher the weave, then the more supple the tyre and the better it rode and faster the tyre was. And the reason why this was is because it acted like a very, very thin wall that kept the tyre in contact with the ground and absorbing all the imperfections. So the tyre was actually faster on a not so smooth surface. But now we've got the opposite. We've gone from like 19mm tyres this year. In the old days, it's running 100 psi or even more with the tubulars. And now we're going into this lower pressure type of tyre and a much bigger volume. Now that's great, especially for sealants and mountain bikes and all that to work, all that sort of stuff, and also because you have more air volume, and the whole air volume in the whole car acts as a cushioning effect. It gives you more comfort, which is great. But a lot of people are saying that, oh yeah, these bigger tyres, they're just faster, and we should be riding bigger tyres on a bike. Well, there's a number of reasons why that is true, but not true. Now, the first thing as well is if you have rollers, as they do in a lab test, and they put these different tyres on the rollers, they actually do have some wattage difference, and you can actually measure it. And the wider tyres and softer sidewall tyres tend to be less watts. They take less watts. And that's true, and you can measure it, absolutely 100%. But what people are forgetting is the combination of the total resistance it takes to push a bike forward. Now, once you start moving above about 10 to 15 kilometres an hour, the main force to overcome is basically aerodynamics. It's not the wattage lost in the chain or the crankset or the bearings and all these free spinning bearings we have these days, ceramic bearings and tyres and all this. That actually becomes an insignificant value. And the main force we need to overcome is the air. We're pushing through the air. We're acting as a sail in the wind. And most of that is our body, unfortunately, which we can't change unless obviously we go on strict dieting and lose weight and make ourselves slimmer. But as far as the bike goes, it's aerodynamics. Now, even if we talk about the whole bike in itself, that's only like 20% of the drag and 80% of the drag is you. So the biggest way to go faster with all of this stuff, tyres, aerodynamics, disc brakes, aero frames, whatever, is to get yourself in a more aero position. That's it, that's the facts. Now, okay, let's get back to tyres. So we get this tyre, and yes, it uses less watts than another tyre, so we whack it on. And we put these fatter tyres on, and we go, yeah, okay, we're going to go faster. But you have to really ask yourself, people who are racing, and the pro peloton, that investing millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars into these tours, are not using them. And they're still using tubulars. And you go, well, either they're dummies and they don't know what they're talking about, or they actually have done the tests in the real world and found that these things are really insignificant values. And that's the reality. Once you get above 10 kilometres an hour, the rolling resistance of the tyre becomes very insignificant. The only thing that really does give you more speed is really pliable sidewalls, and these come in the very soft cotton tyres that you can buy and silk tyres, and with the higher thread count, because you've got a thinner thread and it can absorb the imperfections in the ground more, so it doesn't try and have an upward pressing force, which actually slows the bike down. So yeah, you can feel them, but as far as actual outright speed, going from the same type of tyre to the same type of tyre from say a 25mm to a 28mm is really going to make no difference. The only difference it'll make is you can run the tyre at low pressure because it's a bigger volume, and you can get more comfort for the same patch on the ground. So yeah, it is a real thing, but what you've got to understand is in the real world, all of this bigger tyre business, unless you're riding on a really poor service, is just, it's not a myth, it's real, but it's like you get in your car and you pick up a 500-gram packet of Jelly Babies and you put it in the car and you go, oh, this is going to make the car slower. Even if you can measure it, it's very, very small. But in the whole scheme of things, it's insignificant to the other losses that are involved in pushing a car forward. So if you can keep it in that kind of context, in that sort of relationship, you've got to understand that these things really make almost no difference because of their percentage of the total overall drag it takes to move that bike forward. So I hope that explains it. I'm not saying that these things are not true, but as I said, it's like putting a 500-gram bag of lollies in your car and saying, oh yeah, but the car's slower. The car's slower because, you know, it's heavier. Yes, weight matters in cars and acceleration, but that's the sort of insignificant values we're looking at. And even if you did do a speed test with that car with the Jelly Bean in and out, you probably couldn't measure it. You couldn't control the variables enough, like wind and air temperature and everything, to even measure that. And that's the same with tyres, and that's also the same with some of these aerodynamic tests that they talk about, single figure watts. It must be extremely difficult to control your test to be able to measure 3 to 4 to 5 watts. Well, I hope, guys, that clears up a few things, because unless you've been involved in testing and controls of the test, you probably wouldn't understand these things. And you've got to remember, if you actually do a test, you have to control all the variables. And drum testing is not like riding on the road, because road surfaces vary so much. If you ride on concrete or you ride on bitumen, as you know, it feels different. And even here in Thailand, I don't know what it is, but it's so much easier to go fast. It's just like, you just do 120 watts and you're doing like 32 kilometers an hour. And you just go, and I'm a heavy guy, it's just amazing. It could be partly to do with the air density is lower because it's a hotter climate, but I also do think it's because the roads are a much more smoother surface. Well, anyway, the videos are getting a bit too long now. We're over 8 minutes. I want to keep it on 10 minutes. So thanks for popping in, and catch you next week. Cheers.